Hey guys, Luke here. There is one thing that so many business owners get wrong when it comes to getting $100,000 in 0% business credit. And the one thing that they get wrong all the time is that they believe to get 100,000, you need to be making multi six figures and to be able to do that. And guys, this could not be farther from the truth. Every week, I am able to get our clients 100 plus in 0% business credit without showing any income whatsoever. Guys, our company, funwithcredit.com, has secured over $20 million in 0% business interest credit. And we have never had to show proof of income, not once. So how are we able to do this? So whenever a client comes into our company and is asking for our help, the first thing that we do is we check their personal credit. And the reason why is because if your personal credit is in shambles, there's nothing that you can put on a business card application to be able to get funding. Like, it does not matter what magic number you put on there. If your credit is in shambles, there's just nothing you can do. You have to make sure that your personal credit is good to go. So what are we looking for on a credit report? So the first thing that we're looking for is, and there's 5 aspects of that goes into a FICO score. The first thing that we're going to look at is the FICO score itself. We want at least a 720 before we ever even touch an application, at least a 720. Now, we prefer to see a 740 and above, but at least it needs to be a 720. Now, if you're under a 720, don't fret, because there's a couple of things that you can check to make sure that might be holding you down. So the first thing that we're going to look at on a credit report is, what does your payment history look like? So we are looking for, are there any late payments? Are there any collections? Are there any bankruptcies? Now, at time, when someone is applying for business credit, I would not recommend going into it with a bankruptcy or a collection. I would do everything I can to get those cleaned off your profile, because it just makes it a living nightmare when you have these things showing on your credit report. If you have a late payment, you should not have more than one in the last 3 years. Even one late payment will still hurt you, but you do not want to have any more than one in the last 3 years. So it's very important for those of you who maybe haven't, or just getting into your credit journey, guard your credit. Like, guard it with your life. For those of you who have, a credit profile, do everything you can if it is having a little bit of problems to get it fixed. Guys, this is very important. Your payment history is worth 35% of your FICO score. It's heavyweight. Now, the next thing that we're going to look for is, how much utilization do you have? So we are going to check every single credit card that you have, and we're going to see what's your credit limit, and how much is the balance, and how much have you utilized of that credit limit. So when we are going through there, we have to make sure that you are not above 30%. If you are above 30% in your credit utilization, it will drop your score down. So if we're looking at a report, and you're at 40, 50, 60% utilization, that's what's dragging your score down. Like, if you are fine with your payments, you have no collections, you have no bankruptcies, you have no late payments, if you have high balances, that will drop your score down. So if we're looking at a report and we see it's below a 720 and we see high utilization and that's the only thing showing, if we can just pay those cards down, it will boost your score up into a 720 and make you fundable. Now, you don't want to have balances on your cards, and the reason why is because when banks are looking at your utilization, if they see you're carrying high balances, it's going to make them skittish and wanting to give you money. Banks only give money to people they believe don't need the money. It's just how they work. So if they see that you're using a lot of your credit limits, they're naturally not going to want to give you credit, because they're like, you can't pay down what you already have. So if we give you money, we're probably not going to get our money back. So utilization is a big thing. It needs to be under 30%. How we like to do it is we'll take it down to 25 because that little 5% buffer can make the world of difference. Because what if you have like a charge? You got to get groceries, you got to get gas, you have some random expense, whatever it is, that extra 5% in your credit utilization can make a big difference. Because unless you can call in to the bank that you have that credit card in and make an off-cycle report, it's going to report that balance for a month, every month. So if you are paying down your cards, to 30% and you get like let's just take a $2 charge or something and it takes it over, or you get like a $100 charge and it takes it over, it's going to show that unless you can call in and make an off-cycle report, which will update the credit bureaus on your balance, it's going to be like that for an entire month if you can't do that off-cycle report. And that's a lot of time where more unexpected charges could come up and whatever. So I recommend taking it to 25% in your balances. Take your credit balances and take them down to 25% of the total credit limit that you have. Now, number 3 is your credit mix. When we are number 3 is the average, or is the length of time, or the length of the age of your credit report. So when we are taking somebody through funding, I want to see at least around a couple of years of age. With a couple of years of age, you've had time to, one, get credit limits and get financial products like credit cards and loans and whatnot. You're able to get those, but you also have time to show the banks of your payment history and to give those accounts some age and show that you're responsible with your money. Because when banks are looking at your credit report at the time of application, they want to see, okay, has he or she been responsible with money for an extended period of time? Because if you've only had credit for 6 months and you're asking, for a $20,000 card or $30,000 card or whatever, these banks, they don't know if they can trust you yet. They're looking at your, if you don't have a relationship with these banks, it's just like a stranger walking up to you and saying, hey, can I have 10 grand? I'll pay you back. But you look and they've only been paying, someone back for a couple weeks or a couple months. You're going to be like, I don't trust you. You have nothing to make me believe that you're going to pay me back. So with credit age, we want to have that around the average age of your credit. We want that to be 2 years. Once you start going younger than that, you're going to risk getting denied because of your credit length and history and stuff just being too small. So a couple of years is a sweet spot. Of course, older the better, but at least 2 years that's what I want to see, is at least a couple of years. Now, number 4 is your credit mix. Now, your credit mix, it's pretty important. When we are looking at somebody's credit, we want to see at least 3 revolving accounts, so credit cards. We want to see at least 3 of them. Now, or you just want at least 3, accounts on your credit report showing. So like 3 credit cards at least. We want those collective limits to at least be 15 grand. I would prefer to see 30, 40 and more. I would never exceed $100,000 in personal revolving credit. And I'll tell you why. Whenever banks are looking at your credit report, when they see your personal credit, they're going to tally how much that is. So let's say you have $30,000. That $30,000 that's on your personal cards is what we call comparable credit. Banks want to see, they want to see you with high limits, because that means that if you're responsible with those high limits, you're going to be responsible with high limits that they give you. However, if you go above the 100,000 mark, you will start getting denied business credit because you have so much credit already that you're not utilizing. So from like 30 to 80 or 30 to 90, whatever it is, that's a good range to be in. At least have 15K. You need to at least have 15K. But I would aim for around 30 and more, but still under 100 grand. So you have good comparable credit. So when you're applying for these business credit cards, you can get good high limits. So that is just something to consider. And I would recommend when you're getting these credit cards, make sure they're from good banks, like grade A banks, because if you're getting from credit unions and they're like secured cards, they don't have the same effect. And also by having these grade A banks like Chase, Wells Fargo, American Express, whatever, all those kind of banks, Bank of America, if you have relationships with them on your personal side, it will help you on your business side when you're applying for funding down the road. So I would aim for about 30,000, at least 15. And like I said, that is comparable credit that will be used to help you get higher limits. Okay, now the fifth part of the FICO that we're also looking at is how many new accounts have you had open recently? So, recently opened accounts, they weigh the heaviest, and this is with hard inquiries as well. They weigh the heaviest on your account in the last 6 months. You do not want more than 2 opened accounts and like so many inquiries in the last 6 months. Now, in the last 12 months or the last year, you don't want to have more than 4. Now, after a year, inquiries and opened accounts, they will be on your, of course, the open accounts will be on your profile, and inquiries, they will be on your profile, but they no longer hold weight in any kind of a decision that a bank would be doing if they were looking at you. And after 2 years, it falls off completely, and that's for inquiries. But you don't want to have more than 2 in the last 6 months. It will really mess up your funding round. Like I have seen that if you've had 2 recently opened accounts, it's incredibly hard to get funding. You will get denied. I've seen that. So just be careful to not have recently opened accounts. Try to, for the year, let your account rest. So whenever you go for business funding, your bureaus are fresh and they're ready to go, and you can maximize the amount of funding that you get. Okay, so you might be wondering, what does any of this have to do with not having to showing proof of income? Like I said, if your personal credit is in shambles, there is no number that you're going to be able to put on there to get approved. Or if you do, you're going to get this much. But you're probably not going to get approved, to be completely honest with you. I don't want to give any false hope. If your credit is in shambles, you are not going to get approved. So that is why that this is incredibly important, and we always take great care in analyzing a credit profile to make sure that they're ready for funding. So now, the personal side. Your credit's good, it's clean, it's all good to go. You're at least a 720, you've got no late payments. Your utilization is 25-30%. You haven't had any recently opened accounts. You haven't been applying for anything, so you don't have hard inquiries. You have good credit age, so you're ready to go on the personal side. You're clean. You're ready to go. Now we're going to get onto the business side. The first thing about a business is, what is the name of the company? The name of your company, as weird as it sounds, holds weight with a bank. If you have a name that has trucking in it or freight, historically speaking, trucking and freight is deemed a high risk. They do not want to fund you. Even real estate. If you have real estate or stuff like that, it can also mess with a bank. It can also mess up your application. So when you are naming your company, I would recommend doing Joe Schmo Organization, LLC. It describes nothing of your company. Because you can always get a DBA, down the road. After you get funding, get a DBA and then just use that as, your business name. But your legal business name, I would recommend something that's not, it doesn't describe what the business is doing. It needs to be very vague and general, just like Joe Schmo Organization. It says nothing about the company, but that's exactly what you want when you're applying for, business credit, is you don't want them to know that stuff. So, especially if you want to be in a high-risk industry. And by naming your company something like that, you can then, when you're talking about your company and what it does, like the nature of the business or the NAICS code, the industry of which your business falls under, you can make it a lot more desirable because your company name doesn't describe what you're doing. If you're saying like freighting and stuff like that in your company name, it really limits you to what industry code you can use. We want to make sure that when we're taking people through funding that we have them in a good, safe industry that's very fundable and that the banks like to see. Because if they don't like to see that industry, if they think it's risky, if they don't think they're, like, banks are greedy. If they think they're not going to get their money back, they're not going to give you any cash. And that's exactly what we do not want to happen. So make sure that your name is like pretty vague and that you're in a safe industry. And two, when we're going through funding, we got to make sure that you have a description of your business that does not make you sound risky. When we're talking to banks, they will ask, like, what is the nature of your company? And you got to make sure that you can accurately describe your business and make sure it sounds safe, make sure it doesn't sound risky, but you can confidently say it. So whenever you are so we got the name, we got the industry. Make sure it's a good kind of vague general name, like Joe Schmo organization, something along those lines works really well. We're in a safe industry, let's say marketing consulting, because banks like to see consulting. That's usually what they prefer to give money to. Now, when you are forming a company, I would not do a sole proprietorship. I would go straight for a single member LLC. If you're a single member, if you're just if you're 100% owner, do single member LLC, or of course, you've got business partners, you can just do like multi-member LLC, but go LLC. You're going to save yourself a lot of trouble. I would not recommend a trust either. Those are a pain. I would just do an LLC. Even if you make it just for funding purposes, guys, you can have multiple companies. You don't have to just have one company. You don't have to just fund that one company. If you have a business that is kind of falling into a risky category, or you got a kind of like a bad name and whatever else, just make another company. Make another LLC. You can use that company straight for funding, and you can use the money from that business to pay for your other business. You don't have to use it just for that business. You can use it for the other business. So, safe name, safe industry, LLC, not sole prop, LLC. And I would recommend, if you're going to fund a company, I don't recommend creating a company and trying to fund it in the next few weeks or even the next couple months. I personally would say give it at least 6 months, preferably a year. But once you start hitting 2+ years, it's French kiss. It's night and day. I mean, because whenever we are applying for business credit, the years of how old your company is do heavily affect, or not heavily, but they will affect how much money you can get. If you have an older company, you can usually use more aggressive numbers. Banks tend to like lending to more experienced businesses because they are more established. So, and some banks prefer at least 2 years of business before they will even give you money. I mean, that banks will do that sometimes, is they want at least 2 years. But I wouldn't go under 6 months for applying. I would wait at least 6 months, preferably a year. But if you really want to start maximizing stuff, 2+ years is incredible. Older the business, the better it usually is. It's like a wine. The older the wine is and stuff, usually it's a little bit better taste. Rounds off the flavors, whatever. But okay, so now you've got a good business. Your credit score is great. You got a good business. Okay, now this is where all the magic happens. Once we have determined all these things, and when it comes to the business, if somebody does come in with a riskier business, we'll evaluate and make sure that to see what we can do. But that, I'm just telling you what we prefer to see and what works best in funding. But now when we are applying when we're applying at these banks, to make sure we don't have to provide documentation, it's very bank specific of what you can put for revenue and income, monthly spend, employees. Naturally, now with some banks, one bank, like American Express, for example, or whatever, sometime about 450 in terms of revenue, and like 125 to 150. That's usually the max for revenue, and around that area is what you would want to do for revenue and personal income that we have seen work best for not getting docked or anything. As I said, we have never been docked, but that's just the range that we have seen to work the best. Now, if you start going above that, unless your company's actually doing more, like if your company's doing more, by all means, but if you start going up and you start towing the line of like $1 million or whatever, you start getting in territory where they will ask you, for documentation. Because if you're at $1 million, your income's probably $200,000-300,000. They will probably they will possibly ask for documentation. And we, of course, we don't want that. If you don't have revenue, the last thing you want to do is get requests for documentation of income at $1 million. It's just not going to happen. Now, if you're making that much, by all means, do it. But and like some companies, like Chase, you can put, depending on the age of your company, you can put like you're over $1 million and $500,000 in revenue or $500,000 in personal income. You can do that. Now, like I said, if you did that at Chase, or at American Express, you're probably going to get asked for documentation. And like with Chase and them, there's different numbers at different banks. But all of those numbers can only work if your personal credit and the structure of your business and everything else inside of it, if those are not good, it doesn't matter what you put on the application. You're not going to get approved. Now, like I said, that is the process that we look, personal, at least 720, hopefully 740 and above. Hopefully they have no late payments. We are definitely not looking for collections. We're definitely not looking for bankruptcies. We want to make sure that stuff is clean. If it's not, it might be best to look into credit repair at that point. But it's just easier if you take care of your credit now than having to do that later, because it can be extremely difficult. So utilization, we got that 25%, we're leaving that 5% buffer just in case if anything happens. We want to make sure that we have a good credit mix. We want at least 3 credit cards, 3 revolving credit accounts. Hopefully we have some loans on there as well, because loans are very beneficial to have because of that credit mix. We want to make sure that we have like different varieties of debt reporting, so it's not like it just adds more diversity, and banks like to see that, and your FICO score will also like to see that. We want at least 15K and comparable credit. Hopefully, or more ideally, I like to see 30 and above, but at very minimum 15. But I would reach for the 30K route. You want to make sure you have a good length of history with your credit. The average age we are looking for 2 years, at minimum. If you are under 2 years, a thing that you could consider is an authorized user, an AU for short. It's where somebody can make you an authorized user of their account. So if they got like a really old card, so let's just say Amex, you want to stay with grade A banks. Let's say they've had this card for 10 years. It's got a $40,000 limit on it. They have exceptional payment history. They have an incredible relationship with the bank. They have like 10% utilization reporting on the card at all times. That would be that is a card I would want to jump on. You don't want to do charge card. You want to make sure it's a revolving account. So you want to make sure it's like a regular credit card, not a charge card. You want to make sure that your credit or your revolving accounts are credit cards and not charge cards. But that would be a great way to add some age by becoming an AU. If you have really short history and you need to help boost it. I wouldn't do too many though. Just do like a couple, maybe a few. But The only thing I will advise you on is that, or my personal take, or my opinion on this would be, whatever relationship they have with that card, whether it's good, bad, ugly, incredible, is going to reflect on your account if you join them as an AU. So you got to make sure it's somebody that you can trust and that takes really good care of their credit. But that's a good way just to get your age of your accounts a little bit older. And then we want to make sure that we have our inquiries and recently opened accounts. We want to keep those like no more than 2 in the last 6 months, but we want 0, honestly, and no more than 4 in the last 12 months. But again, we want to keep that as low as possible, hopefully 0, just so it's not affecting your business credit applications at all. And then, on your business side, have an LLC, not a sole prop. Have a good, safe name like Joe Schmo organization, works really well. You want to make sure it's in a safe industry, so the NAICS code, you want to make sure it's like consulting's really good, stuff like that. Don't want to do freight or trucking. It's very not highly favored by banks, or at least at the time of this video, it's not. And you want to make sure that you have at least 6 months of age, preferably a year, and absolutely incredible at 2 years and above. But that is what we do to make sure our clients do not have to show any documentation. Like I said, once we've considered those factors, then depending on what bank we are, we'll talk about which numbers will work, or what area of numbers will work. And that is how we have been able to achieve over $20 million in 0% business credit for our clients without having to show a single thing of income. So I hope this was helpful. I hope that you guys can see how our process to do that works, and I hope it helps you in your credit journey. So I hope you guys found this useful. You all take care. Bye-bye.